We all know the story of Wild Bill Hickok being shot playing a game of cards in Saloon Number 10 in Deadwood. We all know about the dead man's hand. But Deadwood has so much more than just Wild Bill Hickok. Before the French, there was the Dakota, and Lakota tribes in the area. Of course, the French trappers all came in. There was the Louisiana Purchase. And the Dakota Territory wasn't yet declared a state. South Dakota was the frontier with the Great Plains and the buffalo, the Badlands, and the Black Hills. Lots of open land for agriculture, mining, timber, and of course the economies that would support that with gambling, alcohol, and women. During the Black Hills Gold Rush, Deadwood was the place to be. It's considered one of the most free places to go, where there was no law and there was no government. Early frontiersmen, Charlie Utter and his brother Steve, led the Deadwood to a wagon train containing what they believed were needed commodities to bolster business. The town's numerous gamblers and prostitutes staffed several profitable ventures. Madam Mustache and Dirtium were on the wagon train and set up shop, which was referred to as the Deadwood Gulch. Women were in high demand by the miners, and the business of prostitution proved to have a good market. Madame Dora Dufran eventually became the most profitable brothel owner in Deadwood, closely followed by Madame Molly Johnson. Deadwood became known for its lawlessness. Murders were common, and justice for murders were not always fair and impartial. The town attained further notoriety when Wild Bill Hickok was killed on August 2nd of 1876. The settlement of Deadwood began illegally in the 1870s on land which had been granted to the Lakota people in 1868, the Treaty of Fort Laramie. The treaty had guaranteed ownership of the Black Hills to the Lakota people, who considered this area to be sacred. The settlers were squatting, and this led to numerous land disputes, several of which reached the United States Supreme Court. However, everything had changed after Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer was ordered to lead an expedition into the Black Hills and announce the discovery of gold in 1874 on the French Creek near present-day Custer, South Dakota. This announcement was a catalyst for the Black Hills Gold Rush. When miners and entrepreneurs swept into the area, they created the new and lawless town of Deadwood, which quickly reached a population of approximately 5,000 people. And by 1877, about 12,000 people settled in Deadwood. Early frontiersmen, Charlie Utter and his brother Steve, led the Deadwood to a wagon train containing what they believed were needed commodities to bolster business. The town's numerous gamblers and prostitutes staffed several profitable ventures. Madam Mustache and Dirtium were on the wagon train and set up shop, which was referred to as the Deadwood Gulch. Women were in high demand by the miners, and the business of prostitution proved to have a good market. Madame Dora Dufran eventually became the most profitable brothel owner in Deadwood, closely followed by Madame Molly Johnson. Deadwood became known for its lawlessness. Murders were common, and justice for murders were not always fair and impartial. The town attained further notoriety when Wild Bill Hickok was killed on August 2nd of 1876. Saloons for all the miners, and Deadwood also provided a lot of opportunity for gambling, as well as the prostitution going on in saloons for all the miners, men like Al Swearingen. Prior to opening business in Deadwood, Swearingen had already been running brothels, dance halls, and saloons in South Dakota, mostly out of Custer. His establishments were usually packed when the Deadwood gold rush began, moved up there to capitalize. When camp broke, early Swearingen owned and operated a canvas and lumber saloon in Deadwood known as the Cricket, which featured gambling, prize fights, and shortly afterwards he closed it down and opened a larger saloon known as the famous Gem Theater. The Gem functioned as a saloon, dance hall, and brothel. Swearingen would lure desperate young women to Deadwood, forced them into prostitution by bullying and physical brutality committed by him and his henchmen. Calamity Jane, who was one of those first dancers at the gym, procured 10 girls from City, Nebraska for him on one occasion alone. The results were highly lucrative. The gym earned nightly average of $5,000 and sometimes as much as $10,000, which is equivalent to about $295,000. The gym burned down September 26th of 1879 along with much of the town, but Swearingen built his establishment larger and more opulent than ever to great public acclaim. His talent for making canny alliances, financial payoffs, kept him insulated from the general drive to clean up Deadwood, including the otherwise successful work of Seth Bullock, the town's first sheriff. 1899, the gym burned down again and was not rebuilt. That same year, Swearingen left Deadwood and married a woman named Odelia Turgeon. Famous television series on HBO, Deadwood, which was from 2004 to 2006. Now Swearingen was depicted by actor Ian McShane, figure in the history of the town, ruthlessly murdered and abusive, but ultimately guiding it towards the development and annexation of Dakota territory. Other entrepreneurs, money on their minds, would be Seth Bullock and Wyatt Earp. Deadwood was known being a lawless, rowdy camp, and according to several historians, Seth Bullock, frontier marshal of Deadwood, says after Bullock and Starr's arrival, while Bill Hickok was murdered by Jack McCall had shot Hickok in the back of the head while he sat playing poker. McCall was found not guilty by an impromptu camp court and released, after which he promptly left town. McCall was later retried, found guilty, and executed. The demand for law enforcement grew following Hickok's murder in February of 1877, which included Lawrence County, where Deadwood would be officially the first county government by territorial legislature, and the territorial governor Pennington appointed Bullock to be the temporary interim county sheriff until the first county elections could be held. Contrary to popular belief, Bullock was never a sheriff or a marshal of Deadwood. Bullock's tenure as appointed county sheriff lasted approximately 9 months. During his tenure as an appointed sheriff, Bullock took his job seriously, deputized several residents, tackling the job of civilizing the camp. Despite a reputation for fearlessness and uncompromising nature, Bullock managed the task without killing anybody. In fact, while appointed county sheriff, one of Bullock's first duties was confront Dodge City Deputy Marshal Wyatt Earp. And interested in the sheriff's job, Bullock told Earp his services were not needed. A week later, Earp left Deadwood to return to Dodge. Bullock was also famous as he had several run-ins with Al Swearingen, proprietor of the notorious Gem Theater, Deadwood's most notable brothel. Swearingen had a knack for making money from illegal vice and shrewdly investing some of his profits and cultivating alliances with the camp's wealthy and powerful. Having attained some stability in Deadwood, he brought his wife and kids. The first official county elections were held. The county seat was in Deadwood, and Bullock ran as candidate for sheriff of the People's Party. However, Bullock again ran for sheriff of Lawrence County on the Republican ticket. In 1877, Manning won the election against Bullock and was awarded a 2-year term as sheriff. Whether he repeated electoral losses despite his reputation and standing within the community, or in a way related to his ongoing feuds with highly influential and less scrupulous whoremonger, saloon owner, and alleged racketeer Al Swearingen, is unknown. Bullock and Starr would continue to invest in the future of Deadwood's trade and commerce, investing in several mining claims, flouring mill, as well as other hardware stores set up in Spearfish and Custer. Bullock and Starr's original hardware store in Deadwood in 1894 burned down. Rather than rebuild another hardware store, they both decided to build the first actual hotel in the city of Deadwood, the Bullock Hotel, which still stands there today. Bullock had many friends in high political positions with power, one being Teddy Roosevelt, who's been quoted as saying, "Seth Bullock is one of the last frontiersmen." Calamity Jane. Boy, she is definitely no Doris Day. As hard as it is to believe, Calamity Jane was actually brought to Deadwood by Al Swearingen as a prostitute. She was actually assisting him in trafficking girls from Nebraska all the way up to Deadwood. She had done some scouting, and she did work for Charlie Utter, one of his convoys, wagon train freight deliveries multiple times, which is where she did run into Wild Bill Hickok. Now, Wild Bill Hickok and her, there was no love, there was no anything. He couldn't stand her, he despised her, but she was obsessed with him. Another thing Calamity Jane notable for was some of the crazy quotes and claims that she had made. And as funny as it is, Wild Bill Hickok was always trying to avoid her. She ended up being buried next to him. Even in death, she still stalked Wild Bill Hickok.